Hello, you're listening to Environmental Soup through the facilities of Trent Radio, and my name is Rob, and today I will be talking about freedom of information and proposed changes that will make the access to information harder for the public, journalists, and researchers. And I will focus on the environmental impact of this proposed decision. There is a possible bill that hasn't been announced. When I find out more information, I will share the additional information. I will look at some of the I will also look at many of the articles that freedom of information has been used, and I will switch my screen to a statement from the Commissioner of Privacy. And information and privacy. This is from the Office of Information and Privacy Commissioner of Ontario, and Patricia Coulson is the commissioner. And the commissioner said that the announcement was shocking, regarding the proposed changes to the Freedom of Information and Privacy Act. And it undermines the principle of the Act. And the Act already protects personal, confidential, and constituency records from disclosure. And the Act is being changed retroactively. And there was a quote: "The government's message is plain. If oversight bodies get in the way, just change the rules." And then those other amendments about the changes to the Act. The commissioner said that it would diminish the office's oversight role for data integration provisions in FIPA, which would provide the government with extraordinary power to link records about every Ontarian across government departments, including their health information. And then because the changes would allow emails to go on to other departments, there was risks as well with that. Especially privacy breaches, because governments would accumulate emails and data. Then there's the National Observer article. The article title is "So Much Bull, Experts Dismiss Ford's Excuse for Freedom of Information Overhaul." And this is in the National Observer, March 17th, by Chloe Logan. And then it's saying that experts are contradicting Ontario Premier Ford's reason for exempting himself and cabinet from Freedom of Information request. There was a request by Global News, who filed a Freedom of Information request, and the request the judge ordered release of the cell phone records, and Stephen Crawford, Minister of Public and Business Service Delivery and Procurement, announced the plans to exempt the Premier, Cabinet Ministers, parliamentary assistants, and officers from requests filed under the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And then the article says that the government offered three main reasons for the move: protecting privacy of constituents, protecting the confidentiality of sensitive internal discussions, and thwarting hostile actors from accessing government records. And then the article dives into each of these 3 points. Constituency records. The Freedom of Information and Privacy Act already has requirements to protect personal information, and then there was a case of Dr. Brooks Fallis. And there wouldn't be a transcript of the call itself. And then a journalist who specialized in this reporting, FOI reporting, says that Dean Beebe says that not only does the Act protect privacy of citizens who may be captured in government records, but also that of public servants. And then cabinet confidentiality, the Act currently protects against that. And there's also, and then in terms of predatory information gathering, those protections about that already in the Act. I listened to a press conference and I was disappointed about what was said. It's almost like the Act was not even read. So I will look at the Act, the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. The purpose is to provide the right of access to information under control of institutions in accordance with principles that the information should be available to the public. Necessary exemptions from the right of access should be limited and specific. This does not sound like it is limited or specific, and decisions on the disclosure of government information should be reviewed independently of government. And then to protect privacy of individuals with respect to personal information about themselves held by institutions, and to provide individuals with the right of access to that information. And let's see, what is a... Does it say what an institution is? I'm just looking at what an institution is. It says an educational institution means an institution that is a college of applied arts or technology or university. Institution. The Assembly, a ministry of the Government of Ontario, a service provider organization within the meaning of Section 17.1 of the Ministry of Government and Services Act, a hospital, and any agency, board, commission, corporation, or other body designated as an institution in the regulations. So the changes would impact the Ministry of the Government of Ontario, so that's like the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Finance, natural resources, etc. And then it does say personal information does not include information about an individual who has been dead for more than 30 years, but this is not what this case is. Less than that and involves living people. But they're already protected. And then I went to Part 2, Freedom of Information. And then every person has a right of access to a record or part of a record in the custody or control of an institution unless the record or part of the record falls within one of the exemptions under Section 12 to 22, or if there is reasonable grounds that the request for access is frivolous or vexatious. Let's see. Cabinet records. A head shall refuse to disclose a record where the disclosure would reveal the substance of deliberations of the Executive Council or its committees. So that's something that is... there's a bunch of things that are exempted. Unless it's more than 20 years old. Or if there was advice of the government. So already, cabinet records are exempted. Let's see. And I think there was something about privacy. Solicitor client privilege. Personal privacy. So they can refuse to disclose personal information to any person other than the individual to whom the information relates. And then there's some exceptions. But the privacy, it's already included, and then there's presumed invasion of privacy. For example, if it relates to anything medical, employment, or educational history. And then there's a section about species at risk. If the information will lead to killing, harming, harassing, capturing, or taking a living member of a species, contrary to Clause 9(1)(a) of the Endangered Species Act, but there is a change to the Species Conservation Act. Those notes there. And I think that's from the Act itself. And then there's directory of institutions. And then Secret Canada has Freedom of Information summaries. And those informations can be looked up. Now I will go on to look at some of the articles where Freedom of Information requests were used. There was one, how Ontario could have cracked down on Chemical Valley pollution but chose not to. This article is by Emma McIntosh in 2025, and then it starts with a quote, a non-negotiable risk of cancel, significant elevated benzene concentrations, risks to the public. And that is how the Ontario government referred to emissions of carcinogen benzene from the INEOS styrolution petrochemical plant in Sonia, which was the year before emissions spiked in a state of emergency for neighboring Amjawang First Nations. And then those things that the minister failed to do, and in those 250 pages of internal ministry documents obtained through 2 Freedom of Information requests. So this is an example of a Freedom of Information request that might not have been made public if these changes go ahead, or had gone ahead earlier. And then there was compliance orders, and there was weakened guidelines that were based on Texas, but not on what was recommended. And then someone was directing the government ministry to soften sulfur dioxide rules, and more time to comply, and less stringent rules. And the government backed off a plan to tighten rules around sulfur dioxide as well. So that's one example. And then there's one about a mining disaster. A minister was urged to fix a high-risk gap to avoid a mining disaster. And this article is by Emma McIntosh as well. Public servants warned an Ontario cabinet minister last year about a high-risk loophole in mine safety rules that required urgent action to avoid environmental disaster. And the article says that there can be consequences, including an example of the 2014 Mount Poly tailings disaster, which I made a video about, and then there was an article as well. And then it's saying that multiple governments have not addressed the gap in tailings dam rules, despite being aware of it since 2017. And that means that the Liberal government didn't make changes, and neither did the current government. And then senior bureaucrats raised concerns that Ontario does not have adequate oversight over the off-site tailing dams. And did I highlight anything else? I don't think I did. Oh. And then there's an article, documents to show Ontario may move to allow expropriation of land before environmental review. And this is relating to the Greenbelt. So prior to, there would be less warning about things that are coming up. And the journalists from the Norwell and the Toronto Star did a lot of investigations using Freedom of Information regarding the Greenbelt. And then there was a relationship to Bill 5. And there was internal documents said that while developers and construction companies may react positively, indigenous communities and environmental stakeholders may take issue with the plan, and that's surrounding Bill 5. And this article talks about the opposition to that piece of legislation, and the opposition is ongoing. There's court challenges as well, and that's the bill that allows special economic zones and projects that don't have to go through environmental assessments and it allows organizations to override most laws. The NOLO in 2025 submitted 218 requests, Freedom of Information request. And one point that I will make is that the information requests are costly. So going back to the announcement, it's not clear if journalists will be compensated for changes that are retroactive. They should be, because a Freedom of Information request can cost anywhere from $25 to thousands of dollars. And that's problematic if there's nothing, if you get nothing out of it. If you file the request under one side of legislation and then suddenly the rules have changed, so hopefully they get compensated. Hopefully the legislation doesn't pass in the first place as well. And then I will go back to that. And then there was an article in the National Observer, Ford targets Ontario law that exposes government's worst scandals. And this is by Chloe Logan. One of the scandals is the Greenbelt. And it's still ongoing because there was a request about emails from a personal account that the judge ruled that should be handed over. And then there was under Premier Dr. McGinty, there was 2 gas plants that were cancelled, and that led to uncovering of information. It was also revealed that staff were deleting emails. Let's see. So it's not just under Doug Ford. Let's see. I have about 6 minutes. Let's see. There was the Ontario Greenbelt scandal between 2022 and 2023. There was 30 Freedom of Information appeals filed by researchers, members of the media, and other concerned individuals. And these are just appeals. And then there was use of code words like G with an asterisk, which caused issues. And I made a video about that. And I think that's what this article is about. Yes. So I made a video relating to the article Special Project G with an asterisk. Ontario government staff use code names for Greenbelt call-outs. That's an article by Emma McIntosh. And then there's an article, Greenbelt Files, Doug Ford senior staff discuss changes months before Premier's timeline. And this is an article in the Norwell by Emma McIntosh that involved Freedom of Information request. Oh, that's just... Oh, I think I mentioned that... Oh yeah, Global News... The Globe and Mail has a Secret Canada database that has summaries of Freedom of Information requests that you can look up. People can look up. I encourage you to use it. And then I think I'm missing an article that I wanted to talk about. Oh yeah, there was an article where residents had a Freedom of Information request. So some of these requests, and this is an article. Ontario made protected area small. Neighbors have questions, and that's an article from Cole Mail in the Norwell, September 17th, 2025. And some of these requests might still go through, but it's the ones that mention the ministry or the minister that are at risk of being subjugated. And then those changes to the timelines. It's like 45 business days, but it ends up being 60 days and compared to 30 days about. So it's a huge wait to get information, which is a problem in itself. And then there was an email about North Bay Plastics Company, unclear on environmental permits. That's in the Norwell by Leah Boltz Cooperman. And this is about environmental risks of an individual company. The fact there was to quote the article, a factory's production manager was emailing Ontario's environmental ministry to ask exactly what operations required an air emissions permit and how to get one if industrial plastics needed it. And there was concerns about that in the article. I didn't highlight it. And yeah, if you're listening on the radio, thank you for listening. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. I'll be back next week with a different topic. If you're listening online, then I will continue. Okay, so I am continuing. And I'm just seeing where I left off. Alright, I submitted a Freedom of Information request. So I am aware of how much is protected. Let's see. I'm just seeing if... So section 12, cabinet records. I think this was... this was about... I would like to file a Freedom of Information request for advice from and to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing regarding Premier Doug Ford's letter posted on December 5th, 2024 on the X platform to mayors of 12 municipalities, saying that the government is working on policies and legislations that would ensure funding supports dismantling encampments and prohibits the use of illegal drugs. I'm wondering who was consulted and any advice offered or given, especially in the form of policy briefing notes. And then I asked about the period of October 1st, 2024 to December 6th, 2024. And the total cost of that Freedom of Information request was $180. And from that $180, this is what I got. This is one of the documents that I got. 393 pages. Section 12, cabinet records. So the entire page was blank. And this goes on for 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, and then cabinet records and section 19, solicitor client privilege. And then blank pages, blank pages, blank pages. Cabinet records. So the first 96 pages of a 393 document is blank. And then even on page 96, there's not that much information. And then there was, finally on page 107, there was an email from the mails. So I'm just showing this to just demonstrate how much is already kept confidential. And they didn't give me this information without me appealing the decision, and appeals cost money as well. And then and I'm still going. Oh, I got an email. Oh, this is an email that I already had. And then another. Oh, there was one email. And I'm still going. There was about 93 pages left. So in about 20 years, I hope someone finds this video and makes a Freedom of Information request regarding this information. And then I think those even more documents, if you can believe it. And where was I? So you didn't see me scrolling on that document. But that's what I was doing. And I am concerned about the changes to the Freedom of Information Act because many of the requests involved ministries or the minister, and the government already has the power to restrict a lot of information, as you hold through my scrolling of a document that I from when I had a Freedom of Information request. I hope to be able to. I hope that the government is kept accountable. There are a lot of scandals that have been uncovered, and they should be brought to light. There's a risk of endangering the public if these are not kept. If these are not made public. Money is a concern because it costs a significant amount of money to file these requests, or it can. And yeah, they help make better decisions. And the public might have specific questions that can only be addressed through a Freedom of Information request. They're a valuable tool, and the loss of information should not be taken for granted, and these proposed changes should be opposed. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day, and I will make a new video about a different environmental issue or social issue.